In the last 6 months, more than 1 lakh Hindus have fled their homes, many with just their clothes on their backs. Less than 3 years ago, these people led normal, average lives in Kashmir.
I didn't know any other place other than Kashmir, and I had never traveled to Jammu or any part of India or any part abroad. So that is it, I was, quite happy with where I was.
People were killed and people were kidnapped, and things were in the newspaper almost every day. And you are living in this kind of bubble, and you think it's not going to happen to you. So somebody is killed 40 miles away, you think, okay, it's not going to happen in Srinagar. Okay, that's probably another village that's happened. Then the things started getting closer and closer to home.
I was sitting on my veranda doing my homework, studying a book, and there was crossfiring, and my mum called me in for breakfast, and as soon as I got up, I heard a loud noise, tuck, and there was a bullet that had passed through the pillar. So I was sitting next to a pillar. It passed through the pillar above my head, and had I stood up slightly earlier, probably a fraction of a second, it would have gone through my head.
There's a lot of stuff about how they wanted independence, how they wanted azadi, and funny thing is no one actually asked us if we wanted azadi because we were part of Kashmir as well, we were Kashmiris.
I didn't even want to go back. Go back to what? Go back to being persecuted, raped, plundered, pillaged.
So no one helped us. We were left on our own, literally left on our own, on the roadside.
This was a shock. It was a nightmare which was coming true on the night of 1990 when we left. It was the most painful day of my life, because I think the cocoon and the heaven which I had lived in as a child was being, it was broken to pieces.
Kashmiri Pandits are the original inhabitants of the Valley of Kashmir. In fact, Valley of Kashmir was a huge high mountain lake called Satisar. And the water was drained, the dry land emerged, and Kashmiri Pandits established the first society there. And over the period, this place became the source of all knowledge traditions of India. Everything that distinguishes Indian civilization, almost everything, originated in Kashmir. Whether it is aesthetics, music, yoga, science, literature, poetics, grammar, you name it, even medicine, Indian traditional medicine, philosophy, even Buddhism, when it was reinvented 300 years after Buddha, the Mahayana stream, the Vajrayana stream, was propounded in Kashmir. And it is from Kashmir that the Kashmiris took it to Central Asia, Tibet and Far East. Kashmir owes a lot to rest of India because it sent its best minds to Kashmir. And rest of Indian civilization owes a lot to Kashmir because Kashmir contributed back. We've been waiting for justice for the last 30 years. We've been asking the state of India to reverse our genocide. Earlier this week, Indian state has come to realize that unless the political administrative setup that sustains jihad is not dismantled, any change in Kashmir is impossible. So in order to break the stranglehold of jihad over Kashmir, a few political, administrative, constitutional measures have been taken. That gives us hope. That should pave the way for our return.
So I had a Kashmiri constituent who was with bigger group of first-generation Indians in Sutton, and he approached me as we were talking about the community, the wider community, to talk specifically about Kashmiri Pandits. And the way he described the plight of the Pandits who had to leave very, very quickly from their homeland, and the fact that they feel now stateless, homeless, and they really wanted a centre of gravity, a centre for the community here in London, and if I could do something in Sutton, that would be wonderful.
It's very difficult. I think when I tell people that I am Kashmiri, it is definitely met with a lot of confusion and not really knowing much about the area. I think most people in my life wouldn't have even encountered anyone from Kashmir in the first place, let alone a Kashmiri like Pandit in particular. I'd say the way I sort of show my identity is just maintaining the traditions I've been brought up with and the culture, and trying not to sway much from that, and kind of stay true to my roots and sort of defend myself, defend my faith if ever needed as well. I would like the future just to be that Kashmir is a place where people can visit and the Pandits can go back to and feel safe and not feel under any danger or threat at all, and just a peaceful area. And I think the world is becoming more peaceful.
As a child, it was a very idealistic place to live, looking back, because I've done a lot of reflection in these 30 years.
Very good friends of mine, they said, we can't eat lunch with you now from henceforth. And when I asked them, they said, because we've been told not to mingle with the Hindus of the valley, because, we're not supposed to do that.
This must have been 88, 89, when I was wearing something like a sacred religious thread kind of thing, and one of the kids just started insulting me because I was wearing it, one of the Muslim kids, and said, this is haram and all that. To be honest, when you are a child, you don't think about it too much. You just think of it as any other occurrence of bullying or somebody picking on you at school. But then now, when I look back, it makes me realize that even at that young age, kids in the valley were fed something which a kid that age should never have been fed. One of my elder cousin sisters, even though she topped the class, she was not awarded the first prize because that was an Islamic school and you couldn't award the first prize to a non-Muslim child.
And then we used to hear of bomb blasts here and there. So there was a bomb blast in a place, and there was another bomb blast. And we were kind of used to it in a sense that, being a minuscule minority in a majority population, some of it was kind of expected, and we just kind of carried on with it. But then this time it just got worse. So I spoke to my parents, and they said, well, it is our history, so things do happen, if you are a tiny minority, and things do happen, so don't worry. it's all going to go away. We've seen it before.
One of the very first things that happened in the valley when things started to go wrong was lots of prominent Kashmiri Pandits started to get assassinated. And that happened mainly in and around Anantnag. And that, you read about it in the papers, and I could hear conversations between my parents or between the family, friends and my parents. They were all worried. And every day they would read the newspaper and read, somebody had been shot. A lot of us thought, this is just a blip, a temporary thing, and it'll go away. I'm sure, I know a lot of people thought that's what it was. Little did we know that, this was going to be like a permanent thing.
We used to kind of think it's happening to other people. Even when in the newspaper we used to get news reports of so-and-so has died and so-and-so has been killed. So-and-so has been hit on the head by the bullet. Kejotiko has been sawed on an electric machine. So-and-so has been found 5 days after he was abducted in River Jhelum. It was like frogs in boiling water. It felt that it would never happen to us. It wouldn't happen to me, it wouldn't happen to my daughter, it wouldn't happen to my mom, because we thought we're somehow immune. And that's why I keep on thinking it was some kind of like a frog in a boiling water situation where we thought that's happening to other people. It will not happen to us.
Before all this, obviously there was a progression leading up to it. And I know that there was a lot of people we didn't recognize, and they weren't from Kashmir. Clerics that were brought in, and obviously I don't go to a mosque, or I haven't I wasn't there at that point in time, but there were suddenly people from a different part of the world that sort of came in, and they had started preaching in the mosques there, and obviously they were demanding that women behave differently.
Some of them did say that they used to get some material from across the globe, outside India, different countries, and which told them that they are supposed to be treating us or others who are not from the same faith differently and not at the same level. So, and also that they face dangers, some of the friends who, they did face danger of being attacked. I know some of the instances when people refused to cover their heads or refused to, do whatever was told, they were told to do. They were attacked, especially girls were attacked with acid on their faces, and so therefore they were scared that they will be, basically they will be punished for not listening to what was told by the people who were trying to change the whole, the environment in Kashmir.
And it became worse. Things worsened very, very quickly. It didn't take 6 months or 9 months. Within a couple of months, that's it. Things degenerated from what looked like a couple of isolated instances to, you could feel it was not a couple of isolated instances, it was a movement.
Some of the good Muslim friends, who were neighbors or friends, who themselves didn't know what was going on. And there was a conversation with us. Some people mentioned that now the war in Afghanistan is finished, so therefore they don't know what's going to happen to Kashmir, because they told us that now things have been moved from Afghanistan to Kashmir.
There was a bomb blast in the city, and they did not know what to do with us, with the children, because there was curfew all around. So they dropped all the children in the town centre in Lal Chowk, and they just left us and abandoned us. And I did not know. I was too young to remember or understand what was happening, and I just sat there and was crying. And one of the CRPF Jawans was probably looking out. I don't even remember what was happening, apart from the fact that I was very, very terrified. And how that was it, I would be kidnapped.
From my home where I lived, I had to go to a particular sort of shops for something. And suddenly, when I was I think secondary school, I suddenly looked on my left and saw a huge, a tall man who didn't look like a native Kashmiri. He was wearing a dress, like a Pathan dress, and he was holding AK-47 rifle with him, and was quite tall, and I was small, as a kind of a kid. So I just suddenly looked, and I really got scared at that point, thinking, who's this person? He doesn't look like one of us. And later on, I spoke to somebody about it, and they said, oh, you should not speak about it or instigate them or anybody or raise an alarm, because it's quite normal. These are the foreign mercenaries, and from across the border, people have come here for creating whatever trouble. So there were a lot of undercurrents, at that point. The chief minister of the state had left us at the hands of the mercenaries. You were getting reports that in villages people were being executed on the basis of like ISIS killings, for example. They would I have few relatives and family friends, I know friends, parents and some family members who were brutally killed, and some people's eyes were gouged, some people's like they were beheaded, some people's tongues were cut, some people's hands were chopped. And that was, as I remember, we used to hear these whispers in 88, 89 that this was a Sharia law kind of. There were Sharia courts, independent courts, held in the outskirts of Srinagar and other parts of the valley, where they were like Sharia kangaroo courts or something. So where people who were found to be something called as mukhbir. Mukhbir is an informer, whether it's mostly they were Kashmiri Hindus.
Both my father's brother and my mother's brother, almost within a couple of weeks of each other, were actually point blank threatened. One was kind of almost gunned down, and one was told that he's going to be killed by armed gunmen. So they left with the shirts on their back, nothing else. And at that point in time, we thought that the time has come for us to leave. My Masi's daughter, Masi was a widow. Her daughter had to leave because they saw this happening very close quarters. And at that point in time, my mum said, "Could you take my daughter as well?"
Leaving Kashmir, for us, it was, I remember the day very clearly, the date as well, 27th of December 1989. My dad had been posted from Kashmir from Anantnag, which is where he used to work, to Jammu. So he was renting, I don't know, 1 room or 2 rooms, whatever it was, a little apartment kind of thing, in Jammu. And my mother, my little sister and I, 3 of us just packed our bags one day, and we left Kashmir with him. He had come to collect us, to basically join him. In the winter, in Kashmir, it gets very cold. So it was not uncommon for people to travel from Kashmir to Jammu and spend the winter in Jammu, where the winters are a little bit mild. So we thought we were just, going away for winter to join our dad. And then once the winter is over, we were going to come back. And we never went back. When I left Kashmir, I did not think it would be the last time I would ever see Kashmir, because as far as we were concerned, we were going to just join our dad for the winter, and going to have some fun in Jammu. Unlike most of the rest of India, where you have the summer holidays, 2-month-long summer holidays, Kashmir is the opposite. You have 2-month-long winter holidays. So we thought we were going to just spend those holidays with our father in Jammu. We were quite excited because I'd been to Jammu before, but I was very, very young when I had been to Jammu the first time around. This was the time when I was actually, growing up 7.5, so I thought this time I'm going to have a blast. But then I'm going to come back to Kashmir and tell all my friends about it. And that never happened. Never went back to Kashmir. So never thought for a moment that this was the last time we were going to see Kashmir. Because I remember very clearly, one of my very vivid memories is me going to my maternal grandmother just to say goodbye. I'm going to Jammu. I'll see you back in 3 months. And as we were leaving, she started crying, started getting a little bit emotional. And my maternal uncle said to her, "Don't worry, no need to be emotional. They'll be back in March." And that March, I'm still waiting for that March. 29 years on, still waiting for that March.
I was watching a movie, and suddenly, you heard all these people. They came out on the roads, and there were mosques. They were blaring from the microphones in the mosques, and people saying that we want to make Kashmir into Pakistan. We want the female Hindus to stay here, and we want the men to leave. So something around those lines.
Batav Rusti, Batnya San, which is how we call ourselves, is Kashmiri Pandit. Batav Rusti means without, and Batnya San, Batni is a Kashmiri woman. San means together with them. So basically they'd say, we want Kashmir without what I just said.
No one slept that night because it was imminent that these people were going to enter your house and they're going to kill you. And these are not people from outside the country, or these are your neighbors. So that's even more worrying. These are people you've grown up with. And so I passed the night, and this is my story, and I passed the night, and in the morning I told my dad, I have to leave this. I got really upset. I was like crying the whole night. I told my dad, I have to leave this place now, I can't bear this. This is very difficult. And I reached Jammu, and the only thing I carried was my certificates, because my mom said, this is your passport, because we don't know if you're going to survive this. You carry your certificates. I was in first year of medical school. And she said, you take this, and she gave me her box of gold, her jewelry. And she said, whatever happens to us, this is your jewelry, you can sell it and get some money, whatever. This is your certificate to get a job or whatever, and you just carry on with your life, because we don't know if we are going to survive.
I later on came to know that we were getting phone calls in the middle of the night, and people were calling and telling us that you need to leave now, or you're going to be killed. You need to leave now, or we're going to take your children away. There was also an instance where my Mamaji, he used to travel to work, and my mum or my family was told that we know his route, we know where he is, and if you guys, your community doesn't leave, he's not going to come back.
We came to Jammu in December 1989, and then January of 1990 was when it really became very apparent, very clear to almost everybody that there was no going back. Literally, January of 1990, so many killings, so many targeted killings happened, and so many other families all of a sudden had to flee overnight to Jammu, leaving all their possessions, their land, their property, their cattle, everything back in Kashmir. If you had any sense, by the end of January 90, you knew you were never going to go back.
When we moved, we didn't have much clue about there was going to be something happening in Jammu, although I still remember we used to have some relatives coming over for summers, my dad's uncles or cousins just staying for a few days, and they would always ask him, why did you shift your family to Jammu? And this was early 80s, okay. And I remember he would always say, I don't feel safe there, I don't feel my family safe there. So I kind of know there was early indication, which not everybody kind of felt at that point. But in the run up to 90s, we saw more and more people coming to Jammu. When we got closer to 88, 89, we saw some families shifting, but it was still very limited numbers. 89, I remember, 89, 90, January, I very vividly remember. It was time closer to Shivratri. As I said, we start preparations a month in advance. It was that festive time which we used to look forward to. We all of a sudden saw these lots of families, cousins, uncles, aunts, both from my maternal side and paternal side. Within, like, overnight you would have 3 families joining you, 4 families joining you, and it became like one house being shared by 15 different families, everyone cramped in because they had nowhere. My mother's cousin, who was a very reputed person in Kashmir, he got killed by his own close colleagues who took him out of his home. It was a Sunday, he was planning to move out, and we heard the story later on that they called him, they took him to his office saying there was something that he needed to address, and then he was brutally murdered. I remember when my mother heard about that story, that incident, it was after a few days because obviously there was no phones or anything. Some of the family members moved, and then when they told her about it, I remember she couldn't speak. She was shocked, saddened, and it took her a few days to come out of that.